Now, across Texas, the issue is...
I'm Greg Groogan in Houston.
I'm Stephen Dial in Dallas.
And I'm Rudy Koski in Austin, and this is Texas, the issue is.
This week we talk with the United States Senator from Texas, Ted Cruz, about two issues at the core of his bid for a third term: the ongoing crisis on our southern border and our country's ever-increasing national debt. Senator, $31 trillion and growing, 100% of GDP. Another showdown coming. There will be colossal pressure for Republicans to kind of hold their nose and raise the debt ceiling again. How do you stand?
And what we're seeing right now is the highest debt in history. It is crushing. We're bankrupting this country. The Democrats over the last 2 years, with the Biden presidency and a Democrat House and Senate, rammed through trillions of new spending, which is what is fueling the inflation that is hammering Texans across our state. The cost of everything has gone up, from food to electricity to health care to gasoline. Everything is skyrocketing. And so I'm urging my colleagues in the Senate, my colleagues in the House, hold the line and extract real and meaningful reforms to help fix the problem, because what we're doing right now is wildly irresponsible, and it's hurting Texans and Americans across our country.
Senator, you have witnessed firsthand the multi-layered crisis on our Texas border, with 2.5 million uninvited immigrants allowed to walk in last year, with really no way to get that genie back in the bottle. Now, with the next election nearly 2 years down the road, Texans want to know if there's anything that can be done by a split Congress to slow the flow and limit the damage.
Look, what is happening at our southern border is horrific. I spend a lot of time in the Rio Grande Valley. I spend a lot of time on our southern border. It has never been remotely this bad. In the 2 years Joe Biden's been president, we've seen over 5.5 million illegal aliens cross into this country. It's the highest rate of illegal immigration in the history of our nation. It's never been remotely this bad. And when you go down there, and I have repeatedly brought groups of senators down to the border to see firsthand, to go out on midnight patrol with the Border Patrol agents, to see, you see little children who've been horrifically abused by the cartels, physically abused, sexually abused. You see women who've been violently raped by the cartels. You sit down with Texas farmers and ranchers who show you photograph after photograph of dead bodies they found on their farms and ranches, dead bodies of children abandoned, dead bodies of pregnant women, dead bodies of elderly people that the coyotes have abandoned in the Texas heat. It is horrific. And on top of all of that, we have a deluge of illegal drugs coming across. Last year, we had over 100,000 people die of overdoses in this country, most of them from Chinese fentanyl that is flooding across the border. And it is horrific. I got to tell you, Greg, nobody who looks at this firsthand can defend these open border policies as compassionate or humane. It is cruel, it is indefensible, it is wrong. And the problem, what is so maddening, is all of this is the result of deliberate political decisions by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Democrats in office, that they've made a political decision. It benefits the Democrat Party to have open borders, and so they are unwilling to change. We obviously have divided government in Washington. My view is Republicans ought to do everything we can to exercise leverage to try to force this administration to follow the law, to secure the border. This is inhumane, it is cruel, and it is inflicting enormous harm on South Texas, on the entire state of Texas, and on the country.
Okay, fellas, my one-word reaction is vilify. Stephen, what's your word?
My word is finger point.
Okay, Koski, hit me.
Cannonball!
All right. Well, there you have it. Stay with us. The Fox Texas Trio is unpacking America's challenges, according to Ted Cruz, on the other side of this break. Welcome back as we seek to unravel an ugly pair of seemingly intractable issues raised by Texas Senator Ted Cruz, the border crisis and the national debt. Rudy, When Cruz says President Joe Biden and Democrats are bankrupting this country with profligate spending, is that hyperbole, or let's just say it, hypocritical, because Republicans green-lighted plenty of deficit spending too?
You know, Greg, in reality, there are several things that factor into the inflation that's squeezing everyone. But in politics, like a quarterback in football, the man in the White House at the time, you know, they're going to get blamed for when things go bad. But the accusations seem to be sticking some, especially if you believe the polls, which is why my word was cannonball. I think that Senator Cruz is trying to make a big splash. And what better way than make a big splash than to say it's his fault?
All right, Stephen, as the debt ceiling showdown unfolds and the finger pointing intensifies and talk of defaulting on the debt and cratering the economy frightens folks, how far will it go, and who, if anyone, stands to benefit politically?
There's always a face-off. That's just the nature of politics. So we may see a face-off. It may be weeks, who knows? But at the end of the day, enough Republicans will join with Democrats to continue to kick the can down the road. It doesn't matter what president it is, red or blue, the can always gets kicked down the road. Now, the finger pointing will not stop. It will continue to increase, especially if people are still paying $6 and $7 for a 12-pack of eggs. But I think who stands the best to benefit from it actually is Joe Biden, because it's going to get passed. And so they may hear these campaigns and smear campaigns and talks, but at the end of the day, it's going to get done. So at the end of the day, people will still keep their jobs and be able to get their paychecks.
All right, Rudy, the border crisis has been a big gaping wound for Democrats over the last 2 years. But in the last couple of months, the Biden administration has been gradually backtracking a good bit on its open door policy. How much do you think that has to do with the 2024 election?
You know, Greg, I think it has more to do with what happened back in November. You know, the border will be an issue in the 2024 presidential campaign, sure. But I think the economy and the threat of war, you know, those are going to be the deciding issues in the 24 campaign. Now, with that said, the Democrats certainly did avoid the big red tsunami that was predicted in 22. But Republicans, got to remember this, Republicans gained some ground in traditional blue strongholds like down in South Texas. So when you have a community like El Paso essentially joining in with Governor Greg Abbott and his migrant busing program to other states, that is a red flag for Democrats that they better do something down there. The problem is hard-line positions on both sides continues to prevent any real immigration reform from really happening.
All right, Stephen, let's look forward. Cruz has diehard supporters, but also plenty of detractors here in Texas. Given what we saw in November with Republicans dominating across the board, is he vulnerable to a Democrat? And if so, who would be the most formidable opponent from Team Blue?
Ted Cruz is like Teflon, right? Like he doesn't have support from Democrats, of course. He doesn't have support from some Republicans who quietly dislike him, but he still continues to win. The Democrats are going to have a lot ahead of them because they have to put forward a candidate that has that type of energy that Beto O'Rourke had when he came close to beating Ted Cruz. But at the end of the day, it's still Texas. Texas is still very red, and we're at a time where things are very divisive, and a lot of people are throwing out red meat. Now, some potential candidates, North Texas Congressman Colin Allred, who flipped a red seat blue, is thinking about it, according to multiple reports. He's been spending a lot of money, putting out a lot of mailers, and so he may be filling himself out. And then there's also rumors about State Senator Roland Gutierrez. So whoever goes against him may be a minority, but they still are going to have an uphill climb to beat Ted Cruz, who is not very popular, to be completely honest.
One-word answer, Rudy, is Cruz beatable?
Yes.
Okay.
But not with a Beto type.
I said one word. That's okay. Let's leave it there. To see this interview and others, go to our Fox Stations YouTube pages.
And continue the conversation with us on social media.
And there are a lot of issues to be talked about. The legislature is really ramping up. And so join us next week to find out what the issue is.